Hello everyone, and welcome once again to Stitch Bliss Corner. I'd like to thank people who've been commenting and who've been watching. It's very nice to know that there are other people with the same interests as myself, which is great. I just want to show you something. That is a chatelaine, and I had no idea of its existence until I got a question from the rather wonderful Dina from Half Stitch Cross Stitch. Hello Dina, I really like your videos and you come across as very warm and charming and beautiful work as well. So congratulations for that. Now there are some articles, I'll have to read some of this so that I get all the information to Dina. There are several excellent articles on the internet about the chatelaine which describe the topic in far greater detail than described here. Excuse me. Links to these articles are posted in the description box, which will be put there. Now, as you can see with this chatelaine here, it looks like there's a fair bit of weight in it, doesn't it? Because look at how her skirt is distorted by it. And the back, it's held on with a clip like that clipped over the waistband. And you can see that there's a hallmark there. So this would have been quite a precious one, to have something like that on it. Anyway, I'm getting ahead of myself a little bit here, so I'll just go back. It says the chatelaine comes from a French word meaning mistress of the castle, and this useful gadget was worn by the mistress of the house or by the housekeeper to carry all the keys and objects that she might need around the home. Affixed to a woman's belt or girdle, the perception of wearing the chatelaine changed over time, from a symbol of status and wealth to the holder being the domestic keeper of the household, as with any accessory that could be made into an element of high fashion. The chatelaine reached all levels of society with different materials and functions. So originally, the chatelaine was worn by the lady of the house, and in some of those rather large chateaux and mansions and the big houses, you can imagine that the lady of the house, it would have been a symbol of status because she would have the keys to the, cupboards with important papers in, the wine cellar, the pantry where all the food was, all her precious jewels, everything else she would have affixed to her. Because I suppose really if you got them on you, well, you know where they are all the time, don't you? And at the same time, she had other useful pieces hanging from the belt, such as scissors, as we've got here. There are scissors there. And then in here she might have some needles. I think that little round thing there, they'd have a tape measure in there. A little notebook. She might have some, well, maybe some perfume in there, who knows. But that's a very decorative one, and that would have come a bit later anyway than this early usage. Now it says here, gowns of the era did not have large or convenient pockets, and women did not have large handbags, only little bags or reticules. It was therefore necessary to carry any items that were needed for a specific pursuit. Although worn mainly by women, it could be used by both men and women. Essentially, a chatelaine is constructed from a hook plate from which a series of chains are suspended. That's that one, that hook plate there. From which a series of chains, and this is the back view, but of course this one had 5 chains on it. typically around 5 to 9, and each chain terminates in a tool or sometimes a decorative item. The hook plate is attached to a belt or waistband. There were 2 styles. The majority have a medallion at the top, and then behind that is a metal tongue that hooks over the waistband. The other style, which is more typically American, has a very long brooch pin at the back. So, yeah. Materials range from mass-produced base metal examples, but the majority are in silver or silver plate, often with elaborate pierced and embossed decoration. Metal chatelaines appear as early as the Anglo-Saxon times, but the majority date from the 18th or 19th centuries. They were also called equipages before they became called a chatelaine. I think that was prior to the 1800s, and then after that they became chatelaines. But I should imagine in France they would have been called chatelaines all along. Now, what else have we got here? Some were still being made after the First World War and include examples for specialist use, such as nursing, wearing watches and keys, etc. An extensive range of gold and silver, steel and electroplate fittings and appendages came onto the market, and endless mass-manufactured stamped chatelaines, mainly from German manufacturers, were available in the shops, indicating the widespread use and popularity of chatelaines. Some chatelaines were decorated with enamel and depicted biblical, mythological or genre scenes. Others were inlaid with agate, and toward the end of the 18th century, some were adorned with cameos in a pseudo-classical style. The most luxurious were decorated with precious gems, especially diamonds. A fine example of a diamond, gold and silver chatelaine is that made in 1767 by the French jeweller Jean-François Fistain for Queen Catherine Mathilda of Denmark. Queen Victoria purchased a large chatelaine, and I've got a picture of that, and that really is something to see. And let's see, what else have we got here? Oh yes, the modern day scissor fob could be likened to a version of a chatelaine. I've got my scissor fob here, my Tudor rose on it. From the Collins English Dictionary, the fob is defined as an ornament attached to a watch or keychain, or a pocket for your watch. In this case, the ornate scissor fob is a bit like the ornate hook plate of the chatelaine, and the cord replaces the chain. The scissor fob serves a practical purpose as well to help prevent the small scissors being easily lost. Some fobs take the form of a pincushion. I've got a couple of pictures here. This is the scissor fob there, which Dina was interested in, and also there's a picture there of the scissors with a pin cushion, so that would have been convenient. Right. Now the other thing I found out was that if a girl married the son of a household and she went to live in the household of the son's parents, then let me get this right, the father, the mother of the son who had married the woman, right, the mother, she had the keys to everything in the house. So she was the boss as far as domestic affairs and everything else went, and the security of the items and so she had the status. But if her husband died and she became a widow, then the keys and all the status would go to the son's wife, which would have been quite difficult, I should imagine, for a woman who had been used to running her whole house, and if her husband died, then the son's wife would come in and take over. I don't know. I don't think that would have sat with me too well at all. I think I'd have been off with my horse and cart somewhere else and starting a new life elsewhere. But anyway, that was something that I found interesting. Now, the other thing I found out was that as the chatelaine wearer became more someone who ran the household, as in when the aristocracy decided that they were going to have more and more servants, they would have a housekeeper. So the lady of the house would give her duties over to the housekeeper, and she became the person with the chatelaine. And the lady of the house would have a version of the chatelaine to still show her importance and overall status, shall we say, that she was still the mistress of the house, she was still the boss, but someone else was working for her, being the housekeeper. But in order to show that she still had the status, she would wear a decorative chatelaine with less essential items on it, but she, essential to the lady. She wanted her scissors for her stitching, and she wanted her little perfume bottle or her little sets of favourite needles and her tape measure for measuring up the curtains or the drapes, whatever she wanted to measure, the size of her diamonds. So they still wanted to have this symbol, but they wanted it to stand out from what the housekeeper had. So of course all the precious metals came in then, and they used to go into the jewellers and order a special chatelaine with all the requirements that they wanted on it. And then their daughters, naturally enough, they wanted to look as though they also had a bit of status. So they would have smaller chatelaines with smaller, like symbolic things like a key or, a little thimble or anything that would show that, yes, they were important as well as their mothers. So I thought that was interesting. What else have we got here? Yes, pockets didn't come along for quite a while, and I think that was the problem that the women had, because the sort of clothes that they wore, I'll just see if I can get this one up here. Yes, the sort of clothes that they wore. Oh, sorry. This happens to me often. There's really no room for a pocket, is there? Can't go. Oh, yeah, that'd be better. And see, you can see she's wearing a chatelaine there. But I don't really know how they managed to breathe. The maids used to lace them up so tight, so they had the hourglass figure. And then they used to get fits of the vapours because they used to have trouble breathing, and they had to get the smelling salts out and loosen the stays, as they called them, because the corsets were all made with whale bones and everything, that they had that hourglass shape that they wrapped around them, and then they used to get them laced up at the back. And if milady got a fit of the vapours, the maids had to run in and undo her laces and put the smelling salts under her nose. Yes. Anyway, I digress from... And I will now show you Queen Victoria's chatelaine. Now, prepared to be, really impressed by this. Have you ever seen anything like it? It's got the crown at the top, and I think that's Victoria and Albert entwined together up there, because of course he was the love of her life. And then she's got all these incredibly ornate chains with everything you could possibly want on there. And I'm sure all the servants could hear her clanking down the corridors of the palace. I mean, she couldn't sneak up on anyone, could she? She probably would have to hold them all in her hand. I'll just have a quick count of how many. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. About 17 there. And I suppose she would have had to have got those in bunches, because otherwise it would have all tangled up, wouldn't it? Absolutely amazing. It says here, the Dutch Republic, they were typically used as watch chains for the most wealthy. Similar jewellery was also worn by Anglo-Saxon women, as seen from the burial record, but their function is uncertain. And I think there's something about Roman women somewhere. Ancient Roman women wore chatelaines with ear scoops, nail cleaners and tweezers. They must have been very clean, mustn't they? Women in Britain wore chatelaine brooches from which toilet sets were suspended. All the items they needed for, if maybe they had some ancient forms of cream, or, like how you can get lanolin from a sheep. That lanolin, it's very wool fat, they call it. I mean, they might have had little pots of that, or who knows. I remember reading about the ancient Romans with their Roman baths. And they didn't have soap, but the men used to put oil on their skin, and then they used to get this instrument called a strigil. It was a long instrument, sort of like that, and they used to scrape all the dirt off and then get into the very, the heated baths, the caldera, whatever they used to call them, and then they go into the cold to close all the pores up, I suppose. Anyway, so I think that's probably all I have for you. I hope that answered some of your questions, Dina. And I must say that now when I'm looking through my history books, I'm looking to see if I can see a chatelaine on some of these ladies in the pictures, but I'm not sure if the artists just decided, or to not put them in because they were a bit of a distraction, or whether they were so commonplace they thought that anyone looking at either the photograph that they'd done or whatever, that people would just know that they usually wore them, and maybe they didn't have them on that day or something like that. So who knows what went on. Anyway, so I'd just like to say that in my next video I'm going to be doing a progression on the Scout, just to show you where I am with him, and also a new project that, it's what's the word? Well, it's struck a chord in me anyway, put it that way. That's as far as I'm going with this one. But you'll know all next time. And until then, thank you again, Dina. Happy stitching, everybody. And I'll see you next time. Bye for now.